everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting, February 6, 2025, approximately 9:30 a.m. We have with us today Commissioner DeSeo from Charlotte, Commissioner Cutsinger from Sarasota, myself, Commissioner Langford from Manasota, and we have a Manatee alternate, Mr. Patrick Shea, Utilities Director for Sarasota, for Manatee County. This time, if you would, let's rise with the invocation followed by the pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today, Lord, and we just thank you for all the wonderful blessings that you give us, Lord. We just ask that you give this board the wisdom and knowledge to make the decisions that would be best for everybody that we serve, Lord. We ask that you be with our men and women that protect us and serve us, Lord, at home and abroad. Lord, we just ask that you keep your hand of protection upon them as they do their best to protect us, Lord, and give us the freedoms that we have so that we can meet like we're meeting today. We ask all these things now in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Amen. And flag on the right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody. Thank y'all for coming. If y'all would check your phones, make sure they're off, and so they don't interrupt our meeting as we go forward. You can both get embarrassed because you're the only one sitting there with your phone ringing. And now we'll go to our host county remarks. Richard.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I did just turn my phone off, so thank you. Just want to welcome everybody. It's got a smaller crowd here today, which is good. Thanks for coming. I want to welcome everybody to the facility. We're glad to have this meeting here every year. We're proud of the facility, proud of the job all the staff does, not just to get it ready for today, but all year long, keeping it looking great and keeping it, running great in top-notch condition. Most of y'all will probably be at the barbecue in November, and remember that we did win the best tasting drinking water contest for the region. So all the water today is free today, all you can drink. For those of you that brought containers or jugs, it's only $3.58 a 1,000 gallons, so we will fill you up and you can take it home with you. So again, hopefully have a great meeting and welcome everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, it brings us to public comments. Mr. Tim Reed. We have exactly 45 seconds.
Commissioner, I thought we were fine. If you guys have in front of you and go to, say, page number 1 of your Peace River Basin report, you're going to see Mosaic South Fork Mead Mine. I want to let all of you know that I went up there this Sunday to do a toxic tour. I took a reporter with me and an elected official, and we left at 6 a.m. and we returned back to Charlotte County by 1:30 in the afternoon. We encompassed 5 different counties, and I do want to let you know that I was out at the South Fork Mead Mine, and I was looking particularly for the eastern extension. They're going to be adding more outfalls there. What do these outfalls do? These outfalls discharge Mosaic's toxic pollution all the way from Tampa Bay to Charlotte Harbor. They're using Alafaya, Little Manatee, Mayacat, and Peace River. These are the 5 major watersheds that take care of all these counties. They're also using multiple creeks and streams. This is the NPDES permit. This is the Achilles heel to phosphate mining. Now, if you go to page number 2, we've got the Mosaic South Pasture Facility. By the way, when I do this tour, I have you on Google Earth. So when I'm driving down the road and you can't see anything, they're sitting there in the car going, what on earth is this? See, it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And if you go to page 4, there's still more about South Paris. Then we go to page 5, the Bartow facility. I filed an administrative hearing 4 years ago, because at that time, we were only discharging up to 2.6 million gallons daily, only. I got cremated in my administrative hearing, and they won, and they got to modify their permit, which they come back every 5 years to renew. They were able to discharge up to 27 million gallons daily. Now, the next page, I believe, is going to be still about Bartow, and the one that I'm really concerned about is Mosaic Green Bay. I flew over Mosaic Green Bay last April 24th, and I was horrified to see that an entire clay settling area had been just completely dismantled, and there is major activities going on there. They want to build a new outfall, D005, which will be discharging again into the Peace River. You know, right now, I personally am working on this. I have other people who are contacting our legislative delegation, our representatives. And what we're doing is we're asking them, one, to have the MCLs lowered, the daily total loads lowered, and what we really would like for Mosaic to do, which was part of my administrative hearing, is for them to have to build industrial wastewater facilities on each one of their sites. This way, they can recycle, they can clean their water, they can build a new clay settling area, they can take the stuff from the membrane and discharge it there. All the way from Tampa Bay to Charlotte Harbor, it's no mystery that all the seagrass is dying.
20 seconds, Mr. Leach.
Thank you. So please, I would ask you to contact our governor, Senator Ben Albritton, Rep. Danny Nix, Vanessa Oliver, every one of them, and start asking them. We need better help. We need more help from you guys. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else that fill a card out?
Not anybody?
Nobody? All right. Okay, that brings us to our election of chairman and vice chairman. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Doug Manson.
It's my rare opportunity to run a meeting for just a few minutes, so we'll make it as quick as we possibly can. But the process is that we take nominations, and the nominations can come individually for the chair and the vice chair, or it can be moved as an office of both chair and vice chair. We open the nominations. There doesn't need to be a second for a nomination, and then once the nominations are open, I'll see if there's any further nominations. If there are not, the nominations will be closed, and then there will be a vote on the persons that were nominated. So I'm opening nominations now.
Mr. Manson, if I may, I would like to nominate Commissioner DeSeo from Charlotte County to be the chairman, followed by another nomination for Commissioner Cutsinger of Sarasota to be vice chair.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations at this time? Hearing none, I have a vote on the nominations for chair, Commissioner DeSeo, and nomination for vice chair, Commissioner Cutsinger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we have a new chairman and vice chairman.
I've only got one piece of advice on outgoing chair, and the same as Commissioner May had given me here a while back, that as the outgoing chair and you as the incoming chair, 25% of the bonus you get for being chair, I get. So.
I'll remember to give you.
Okay.
All right. All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate you putting faith in me to chair this for the next year. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any of the members wish to pull and discuss? If not, I'll entertain a motion to move consent.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second. We have a motion and second to move consent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Next, we'll move on to the regular agenda. And Mr. Anderson, who's going to take the lead on the water supply condition report?
That'll be Katie Gilmore, our Director of Operations.
Good morning. I'm Katie Gilmore, your staff. Happy to take over our regular item number 1, our water supply conditions report. The same report we go through every board meeting, going over the rainfall, river flow, withdrawals, and our storage conditions through mid-January. And then we'll also go over the regional water supply deliveries for our customers in December of '24. And of course, this is for informational purposes only, no action required. Okay, so first up is the Upper Peace River Basin average monthly rainfall of the last 2 years. This goes through this one goes through the end of December. So you can see we had above average rainfall in September and October, but it has been below for November and December. January is not shown on this graph, but we were trending pretty low in January. At the end of the month, we had that rain for the third week of January. Bumped us up a little bit. We finished at about 1.7 inches, which is still below the historical average of 2.18. And as an aside, the National Weather Climate Prediction Center is predicting below average precipitation for the next 3 months. So February, March, and April should be below average as well. All right, next up are the river flows. So this shows you the last 2 years, again, this one through January 16th. Our red line is the minimum flow required to withdraw the river of 130 CFS. Blue line is our historical monthly average flow, and the green is the actual flow received. So of course, this data is correlated to the rainfall data on the previous slide. Our below average rainfall received in November and December translates to below average flow here through mid-January. Of course, this did bump up a little bit. It was trending pretty low in January. We got that rain. Flows came up. As of the beginning of this week, we're seeing about 324 CFS on the river. So it's still below the historical average for January, but it is above the 130 CFS to be able to withdraw. So that takes us to the river withdrawals. Again, this is for the last 2 years through the middle of January. In 2024, we were able to take water off the river for 11 of the 12 months of the year, every month except for May. Withdrawals for November and December are shown here, 44.3 and 30.6 MGD. As of the date of this graph, in the middle of January, we were withdrawing about 29 million gallons per day. We are able to still withdraw today, and we're about 24 million gallons per day. We can take a little bit more, we don't need to because of the levels in the reservoir. And notable on this slide is that when Helene and Milton came through, we did turn the pumps off on the river for several days ahead of the storm until after the storm to confirm the water quality was good and the power was back on, fully on FPL power. So that's some of the lower withdrawals that we saw in those months, even though there was plenty of rainfall. Next up is our surface water storage. This is for the last 3 years in our reservoir system, again through the middle of January. So you can see our typical seasonal trend where we're full volume through the summer rainy season, and then that decreases during the dry season as we're pulling more out of the reservoirs than we're able to put in from the river. The reservoir here, you can see also is lowered ahead of Helene and Milton, of course, preparing for rainfall we may have received for those storms. But we were able to bring up back to full by November. As of the day of this graph, we were sitting at about 6.7 billion gallons in the reservoir system. Being able to continue to pull up the river, we're currently slightly higher at 6.8 as of this week. All right, next up, our aquifer storage and recovery system. The blue line here is the total volume that we have in storage in the system, and the reddish-orange line is the usable volume. About 60% of the water in the system could actually be recovered and put back through our treatment process. We recovered ASR in May of '24, the only month that we weren't able to pull off the river. And then we were recharging from September through early December. So as of mid-January, the total amount we have in storage is 8.8 billion gallons, which is a usable storage of 5.2 billion gallons. That's very similar, slightly higher than we were last year. So that brings us to the estimated days of supply. So this is the total days of supply we have when you look at the ASR system and the reservoir system. So 6.7 billion gallons of surface water and the 5.2 billion gallons of usable ASR can give us a combined storage to the end of December of 11.9 billion gallons. Translated to the number of days of storage at our annual average use of about 30 million gallons per day. That's 399 days or about 13 months of supply. At the allocated quantity from the master water supply contract of 34.7, it's slightly lower, 345 days, but still that's 11 months of supply in the system. So overall, as typically presented with this item, we're in excellent storage condition at this time. Okay, so next, moving on to our total regional water production and use for the month of December of '24. So this table here shows you the authority, members, customers, water supply capacity, and production for the month of December. Our combined regional capacity of the authority and our customers is about 107 million gallons per day. In December, we delivered 28.24 million gallons per day to the region. Our members and customers together delivered 62.56 MGD, so that gives the total regional production of right around 91 MGD. Of that total, 3.42 was delivered by Manatee to their non-authority wholesale customers, so the town of Longboat Key, city of Palmetto, city of Bradenton. So the total December demand for authority members and customers was 87.38. And that's about 81% of that 107. All right, next we'll walk through the individual members and customers. So first up, Charlotte County. There you go. In December, Charlotte purchased 13 million gallons per day from the authority and self-supplied about 0.86 from their Barton store facility. Gives them a total use of 13.89 million gallons per day, and that comes to 72% of the countywide available capacity. For DeSoto purchased 0.72 million gallons per day from the authority. That includes their normal allocation and the little bit of pool water they have requested for fiscal year 25. They were able to self-supply 0.36, and that gives them a total use of right around 1.1 million gallons per day. And that's about 73%. For Manatee County, of course, not take water, but this is their production. So from their water supply facilities, they produced 51.38 million gallons per day in December. 43.74 was used to serve their retail customers. On the wholesale side, 3.42 went to their non-authority customers, Longboat Key, Palmetto, Bradenton, and 4.22 was applied to Sarasota County. That comes to 97% of their total permitted capacity. For Sarasota, they purchased 13.72 from the authority and self-supplied 6.72 from Carlton. Again, they took the 4.22 from Manatee County, giving them a total use just under 25 million gallons per day, or 81% of their total available capacity. All right, and last up, the city of Northport. They purchased 0.77 and then self-supplied 3.24 million gallons per day from their Myakkahatchee Creek and Welland Park facilities. Exchanged a small amount with Sarasota County, giving them a total right at 4 million gallons per day, or 49%. So the average annual regional use from fiscal year, water year 2014 through 2024, shown here, and the running 12-month average to date. This is for all regional deliveries to members and customers, as well as non-customers, so this number includes Manatee wholesale. As of December 2024, the running average was 87.88 million gallons per day, and that comes to about 83% of the available capacity. And then the breakdown of the regional demands from the authority members and customers during December. Again, the total use was at 91 million gallons per day. For 85% of the regional capacity, and that leaves us 16.5 million gallons per day of unused capacity. All right, and that's all. I'll take any questions if you have them.
Any member questions? I have a question on the withdrawals. When we withdraw, is there water testing done, pre-treatment on what's being pulled?
From the river?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're doing regular testing every day, multiple times a day from the water coming off the river, and then of course in the reservoir system as well. So like for the storms, we're looking to make sure the salinity's not too high in case there was some storm surge coming up. Also making sure their turbidity has dropped down low. Especially if we don't need it, we don't want to pull in water that's going to be more difficult to treat the plant.
So I assume there's different parameters that are set on what you're actually testing for. Mm-hmm. Do the tests reveal anything consistent with mining operations?
I'm not prepared to answer that, not that I know of. I think we do have a few things on our things that we note that if they go high, that's kind of a flag. I admit I'm a little bit new still, so I'm not 100% familiar. I don't know if Richard has anything to add on that. Not specifically that we're looking at. It's normal water quality parameters.
Not specifically, but we do check conductivity, total dissolved solids, turbidity, color, things like that. So, and we also have monitoring upstream on Horse Creek. So if there were some sort of a release, we get an early warning system from that device that tells us, hey, there's something going on, the turbidity's high, there may have been something going on. And that's usually, depending on the flow, sometimes 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week heads up. So we have ample time to shut the pumps off, turn them off, be prepared, go to the reservoir to withdraw water. So
we have the Horse Creek settlement as well, which requires that we're notified within 24 hours as many discharges that occur that are not permitted discharges out of the Horse Creek Pond.
Correct. In addition to the online monitoring, Doug's correct, we're required to get a phone call anytime there's an abnormal situation going on, so.
Because regardless of what we pull, we're still cleaning it anyway, so it still the water still has to meet our standard.
Correct.
To put it
Correct.
into the system. So.
Our standards, state standards,
Yeah.
you know, and fortunately, you know, as Katie pointed out, we have a year's worth of storage in the bank, so we're in the luxurious position of being able to shut things off if there's water quality issues. We don't need to take the water if there's even a
Right.
hint of a problem, so.
Okay,
So.
Thank you. Any further member comments? Okay, thank you for that presentation. We'll move on to item number 2, FY 2026 budget schedule and budget considerations. Mr. Anderson. Yeah, no actions required for this. This is informational purposes.
Correct. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson for the record. This time every year is the start of our budget cycle, kind of similar to your local governments as well, I'm sure. What we'd like to do today is kind of walk through the board process, the board schedule, and bring up some potential issues that we may see coming forward with the 2026 budget, as well as talk about some of the budget documents that we use in the formulation of the budget, and as far as bonding and the rates and fees and the schedules that we put forth for the budget. So what you see here is a budget schedule or budget calendar. We're sitting here today. This is the beginning of the kickoff of the budget process. We will be bringing you a tentative budget on April 6th for your approval. Between now and then, we will prepare the tentative budget. We have a professional staff meeting to sit down with all your staffs, go through the draft budget on March 5th, receive any comments, and bring those back, address those comments before we put the tentative budget in front of you. In addition to that, we have 2 additional professional staff meetings, one in May and one in July, and a board meeting June 4th to again address any questions or concerns or make any changes to the budget before we bring you the final budget on August 6th. Just a little background about the authority structure. We are an enterprise fund. We collect money from water sales, from grants, from our investments. We use those funds to fund the operations of the facilities and the authority. We do not collect any tax revenue or levy any taxes to fund any of these activities. The authority is broken down into 2 basic cost centers. One's the administrative cost center and the facilities. The administrative cost center includes the administrative salaries, our human resources function, finance and budgeting, and it supports the cost associated with owning and operating the Lakewood Ranch facility. That represents about 1% of our total budget. The remaining 99% is the facilities cost center. That includes the facilities O&M, which includes basically water production and maintenance. We've got technical services, and we have construction services, which includes all the project management related functions to do with our CIP and our R&R projects. This is a look at some of the guiding documents that help us in our budget preparation. As you can see, we have the interlocal agreement creating the authority. That was last amended in 2005. We have the 3rd amended agreement to the master water supply contract, which was, as we all know, completed in December of 2024, just last board meeting, so thank you for that. We also have the budget resolution that sets the methodology for the rates and fees, which was approved at the October 2005 board meeting. Other governing documents or guiding documents that we use are related to our utility bond covenants. We're required to keep certain debt service schedules and debt service coverage to maintain compliance with the bond documents, so we have to comply with all those. And then there are various budget policies that have been adopted over the years, helping us to define reserves, accounts, both restricted and unrestricted reserves that we apply to the budget process. Also the CIP, of course, that's playing a big factor this year and the next couple of years in the budget. Both the CIP and the CNA are factored into the budget process. And of course, we have to be consistent with our strategic plan. The last strategic plan was approved in 2021. We want to make sure that the budget helps us meet the guiding principles that are set out in that strategic plan. A little bit more about the budget obligations. We're contractually obligated to provide safe and secure water to the region. We have an obligation to meet our contractual goals of 34.7 MGD to the customers. That number will soon be increasing to 52.7 with the construction of these CIP projects. We of course always want to operate in a cost-effective and efficient manner. That leads us, naturally to provide a consistent financial stability, and that's very important, especially this year as we go out to the bond markets. You're going to hear a little bit more about that in item 4, but we want to make sure that we demonstrate financial security and stability as we go forward to fund these projects going into later in 2025. And of course, we want to maintain reasonable water rates for you, the customer. Again, the authority's April 2nd board meeting will bring you back a tentative budget and a preliminary schedule for rates and fees for 2026. And then we will bring the final document to you at a public meeting on August 6th. The rates and fees resolution includes some of the items you see here. Includes the water rate, which is based on the base rate, and I'll get into some more details in a minute. And that covers all the fixed costs that are levied against the customers, such as staffing, facilities, maintenance, and the debt service. And then there's a use rate, and that's applied to the actual water used, the metered water that we deliver to each customer. And that includes the cost of power, electrical, and chemicals. And then there's a member fee. That fee is charged only to the 4 members. That covers administrative costs, such as the Lakewood Ranch facility. And there's a planning and management fee that's levied against all 5 customers. And that's used for future planning studies and taking care of things such as updating the master water supply contract that we just did in 2024. And then there's an interconnect water charge, the last item there. That is a charge to non-customers of the authority. If someone, an entity wanted to buy water from the authority, there's an established rate for that. And that's something we're going to look at this year as part of the 26 budget. With the inflation that's gone on the last 3 or 4 years, we need to evaluate if that amount, which is $3.30, needs to be increased to match the inflation and how things have gone up in cost over the last couple of years. So we'll be looking at that as part of the budget process this year. A little deeper dive on how the water rate is established. It's comprised, as I said, of 2 components. It's a base rate charge and a water use rate charge. The base rate, again, has all the O&M costs. It has all the staffing, repairs and maintenance, R&R, renewal and replacement, and it includes all the debt service charges to each customer for the debt portion of the contract. The base rate is levied to each customer on a monthly basis, and it's based on your allocation. Whether you take the water or not, you're paying the full allocation for your share of the water that you've reserved with the authority. For example, Charlotte County has an allocation of 16.1 MGD out of the 34.7, which is 46%. So Charlotte County pays 46% of that base rate charge every month. On the debt service side, that works a little different. That's based on each member's participation in whichever projects they were involved in. So the debt service component of the base rate is different for each customer depending on which project you participated in. And then finally, the water use rate, as I said, is the actual metered water used by each customer. That includes the power cost, the chemical cost, and sludge handling to produce the water and get it out the door to the customers. So the key expenditures we're looking at for 2026 are listed here. It's looking very similar to 2025, fortunately. Most of the expenses like personnel costs, repair and maintenance, professional services, those are expected to go up about with the rate of inflation, 3 to 4% probably in that range. In 23 and 24, chemical costs and power costs went up significantly. Between 23 and 25, the water use rate went from 89 cents to $1.13 where it is today. And that's driven primarily because of chemical cost increases and electrical cost increases. Based on the current trends, we don't see that continuing to happen. We're looking at probably a 3 to 5% increase on both of those. In fact, this year, for the first year, we were able to reduce some of our chemical contracts. In the past 3 or 4 years, they've been reluctant to renew because the prices have been going up so much. But we got, I think, 5 out of the 8 or 4 out of the 8 chemicals did renew at the existing price, so that's good news for the budget. So we are looking at 2 new FTE positions, and those are both related to construction activities in the CIP. We're going to need another construction inspection person to be on site on the projects to help to monitor the progress of the construction. That's dramatically cheaper for us to do that in-house than it is to fund it through one of the consulting firms, because of course they're going to mark it up and charge their fee. No offense to anyone in the room here, but doing it in-house is considerably cheaper for us to do that. So we're looking at adding a position for that, and a compliance manager to help us manage the ever-increasing permitting matrix that we face every day that seems to be getting more and more complex and important. So we're looking at someone to help us manage that function.
Also unpredictable.
Unpredictable is another good word, yes.
I have a question real quick on that.
Yes,
so,
sir.
You must have done some type of analysis to determine it was cheaper to go in-house with somebody with benefits and things like that, as opposed to a consultant maybe for a one-time construction project. You went through that exercise?
We've done that in the past, yes, sir. Yeah.
When you say in the past, how long ago in the past?
We've done it on several of the pipelines in the last 3 or 4 years. We've looked at that. We've actually added one, last year we added one field inspector as well to be on the 2B job.
So what was the difference? Was it tens of thousands of dollars when you did the analysis? Because when the project's done, the employee stays on the as an
Employee does
FTE.
stay on,
So,
yes. But we have had the ability in the past to roll that into a different position. Maybe that person becomes a maintenance technician or a field sampler or something like that. So as we've grown, we've been able to absorb those positions that were once I'll call them a project position, into a regular O&M type position. So,
yeah, because the pay scale for a construction inspector might be different than somebody pulling water samples, or so.
absolutely.
So their pay scale would change as you move them around.
Depending on what position we had open for them, it could change, yes. It could go up or could go down, depending on what we had available and what our needs were, yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I just know once you get an FTE and they're on the books, they're on the books. You know, as opposed to a one-time, you know, if you're overwhelmed with construction right now, do you anticipate that person continuing on because of more construction in the pipeline? Have you gone that far out on this?
We haven't gone quite that far out, but just looking in general at the construction we're going to be facing in the next 5 to 10 years, we don't see it slowing down right now. We see, you know, once these projects are done, probably rolling into the Brackish Road project or another pipeline project, possibly, you know, 3C or 2B and 2C. So we don't see the workload diminishing to the point where it will be an issue.
So in Charlotte County, whenever administration wants to bring somebody on, I don't care what department it is, we get a justification statement. It essentially describes the position, the salary with benefits, you know, the total cost of the FTE. And then it has a segment on there that it discusses why it's needed. So it's a justification process. So, you know, I don't have a problem hiring people, but we go through that exercise to say, so I can say, this is a good expenditure of, in this case, ratepayers' money.
Sure. And we can work something up and bring that back to the April.
Yeah, that would be great, just so I can understand the
Sure.
dollars.
And I think if we do that, I think it will be pretty clear, because when
Yeah.
you add the multiplier of the engineering firm on top of the cost
Sure.
of the employee, it really adds up.
Yeah. Thanks, sir.
In a short, just one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
In the short term, you're 100% correct. If it was a 1-year project, we would certainly farm it out to a contractor. But the length of the time we're going to be building things here, it makes sense to look at that.
Thank you.
Thanks. The other issue, I guess I'll bring up the property insurance options, or that we need to monitor property insurance. We had a huge jump from 24 and 25, 87% increase in the property insurance. It went from for about $420,000 to $790,000 last year. Now, we're being told it's not going to jump that much, or that's what we were hearing prior to the 3 storms hitting, so we're not too sure. We do see it going up, but we're going to have to evaluate that further and keep an eye on that. We get our quotes in late March, so we'll have information more on that at the April meeting. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on for the budget. And then R&R funding, we're going to maintain that next year at the same rate this year, $4.5 million. And that's based on a sufficiency study that we did, looking at how many assets we have, the age of those assets, how long we need to wait to spend money and replace them. So that was done about 3 or 4 years ago to look at that. And we've been increasing that slowly over the last 3 or 4 years, but next year we should be able to keep it at $4.5 million. And then finally, the DeSoto payment, as you remember, as part of the amendment to the Master Water Supply contract, that will be going up starting in 2026. It'll go up about $200,000. And again, that $200,000 will be prorated across the allocations of the members. So that'll be effective beginning next year. A couple of the non-rate related expenditures, as you can see here. Again, I mentioned the member contributions. Last year that was $506,000. This year it should remain the same or go up just slightly with inflation. That is charged to all 4 members. It's 50% based on pro rata population and 50% split equally among the four members. Then there's a management and planning assessment fee. Last year that was $475,000. That takes into account planning for projects basically over the next 3 years. There's no proposed change in that, so that number should be the same for 2026. Then of course the CIP is going to play a huge role, as it did last year, in the budget. Continue to play a role over the next 2 or 3 years going forward. It's going to help us finish the surface water expansion project, finish both pipelines. Those are well underway. I think we're almost 50% complete when you add the total footage in the ground compared to the 2 projects. We're almost 50% complete on those pipeline jobs. So those are going well. And just as a reminder, the charges on the CIP, the borrowing does not hit the rate this coming year. It hits when the project is complete, and we go ahead and capitalize those funds and add them to the rate. So, and here's a snapshot of kind of the CIP spending that we've gone through the last few years. You can see it makes up a major part of the budget. The water sales, just for your information, represents about $47 million. And you're looking at $200 million of that CIP money. So CIP is dwarfing the budget right now, as you might expect. The light blue is the authority funds that we're spending. The dark blue are the grant funds. As you can see, we're heavily weighted. That includes Swift Mud funding as well as state funding from alternative water supply and the appropriations. And so you can see we're going to be spending heavily the next 3 or 4 years on CIP. And again, some of the sources of those alternative funding, some of the grants, of course, we get funding from Swift Mud. They've always been a great partner of ours on these regional projects. The money is tight right now, though. We are competing against Tampa Bay Water and the Polk Water Cooperative for funding. So there is a competitive market for those funds, and they're very limited. We have applied for state funding for 2026 for both the pipelines, the 3C and the 2B project, and the surface water expansion program. We'll be going to Tallahassee next week to meet with some of the legislators and find a sponsor for both of those. So we'll update you more on that once we get back from Tallahassee, but that's scheduled for next week. And of course, we continue to use the line of credit that was approved a couple of years ago. We have a $100 million line of credit that we've been using to fund these projects until we go out for bonding and final funding for the projects. So again, that's the budget process in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything, and we'll be bringing something back to you to look at the April meeting.
Any member questions?
No, sir.
You mentioned about going up to the legislature to lobby. I was looking at Governor DeSantis' budget, and it looks like he bumped up a lot of water quality funding. I think beach renourishment went from $50 million to $100 million, septic to sewer, which may be more appropriate for local governments. Have you looked or had staff analyze the budget proposal to see where the authority may be able to take advantage of some of that movement?
can't answer that right now, Doug's.
It's 60 million for alternative water supplies, which is what we are. So yes, we're in-house with, assuming that they were gonna do that budget, in-house with 2 requests already for pipeline projects and obviously for, the reservoir. So it's not a huge bump up from last year, but, if we can get a portion of the 60 million, we'll be happy. So we can get another 6 or 7, maybe 10 million, but we'll see. It's a competitive year. You can imagine there are lots of projects, but we're in the queue and we're working it.
Okay, good.
And hopefully, any help. Although I would say if I were Charlotte County, I'd be maxing out when it came to the sewer because that was the biggest increase. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's part of our legislative agenda.
Absolutely.
We're always doing that, but I never looked at it through the prism of the water authority. What can we take advantage of? And again, it's only proposed. It's a proposed budget, so.
But they are, talking to Lord Donaldson, who's working in the lobbying side of it, they are, both Ben Albritton, obviously, is
Yeah.
helpful, and other locals are saying that local representatives are saying there'll be money available for alternative water supply, which is what we need.
Yeah, it's good to hear. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, gentlemen, if there's no further comments on this item, we're gonna move on to regular agenda. Item 3, owner direct purchase for surface water supply expansion project.
Morning, members of the board. Mike Knowles with Authority Staff presenting regular agenda item number 3. This is the owner direct purchase for the surface water supply expansion projects. There will be a motion at the conclusion of this presentation for consideration by the board. I will go over the current opportunity for owner direct purchase that we're here for today. Talk about some of the lead times we're seeing on really critical equipment we need for both of these projects with the surface water supply expansion. Give you a scheduled update for calendar year 2025 as it relates to board action items, and entertain any questions from the board before going to the motion. So the current opportunity in front of the board today is for the surface water supply expansion project. That is the treatment component, which is the Peace River facility expansion, and the storage and conveyance component, which is the Peace River Regional Reservoir number 3, or PR3. So it's those 2 projects underneath the surface water supply expansion. So we're looking to purchase electrical equipment. That would be for both of those projects. And in addition to that is steel sheeting. This is permanent steel sheeting made for the canal intake on the reservoir pump station. So the benefits for owner direct purchase is obviously the sales tax savings, 7%. The permission from the board to proceed with the purchase also lets us time the market for raw materials, or if the pricing is competitive for the equipment, and also helps us get a jump on long lead times. In addition to these items, it's also a requirement in our cooperative funding with the district that we look into owner direct purchase opportunities and then explain to them why we did or didn't go through with that. So working with both the contractors we have on both the treatment plant and the storage component, it's pretty daunting when you look at the lead times for the electrical components, especially when you consider we have almost 3 years to build the projects. If some of the equipment comes back and you've got almost 3 years of lead time, we've got to jump on that early. But what we are hearing from the contractors is the manufacturers are being very conservative with their numbers, plus allowing us to get in line. If anyone else jumps that line, we get to move ahead. So it's to our advantage to get in early on items that are already designed ahead of the 100% design plans for the entire component of that project. So the request today is going to be for $13 million as an upper limit for electrical equipment for both of those, the treatment and the reservoir project, as well as $2 million for permanent steel sheeting with the intake channel with the reservoir pump station for a total of $15 million. And that represents up to $1 million in savings on taxes. As far as a look ahead for calendar year 2025, if the ODP request is approved today at this board meeting, in April, we'll look to advertise our professional services. That would be for engineering, environmental, hydrogeo, and surveying services. Also in April, we would look to bring back to the board a final design amendment for the treatment plant. It's the Peace River facility expansion. And we're looking to advertise our volume 1 for PR3, which is the reservoir portion of the project, for pre-qualification with reservoir contractors during that time frame. Coming back to the board would also be an early works package for that reservoir pump station that we'd be using that steel sheeting for. And if the permitting identifies it, if we have to purchase mitigation credits on the reservoir component, we would look to put down those reservation bids in April as well on that Line 5 mitigation work. For once, on the shortest presentation, I would be happy to entertain any questions you may have before going to the motion.
Any member questions?
Just when we're purchasing it this far ahead, do we have to store some of those materials, some of the equipment?
That's a great question. We're looking to get notice to proceed with our contractors in time that they would be on site to receive the material. With such long lead times, we don't appear to be in a position where we'd have to receive it. However, when we did the plant 4 and 3 rehab, we did owner direct purchase several things like valving, and we were able to store that material on site. So we're comfortable doing that if a transformer shows up early.
It'd be a lot better to get it just in time. So,
It would be great, yes.
so when you're working out these arrangements, include that in the contract. That'd be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Happy to make a motion.
Go ahead, sir.
Move to authorize the executive director to approve the purchase of materials for surface water supply expansion project not to exceed $15 million for the items which are being procured under section 5.4.4 of the authority's procurement policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move regular agenda item 3. Is there any further discussion? Any opposition to the motion? Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 4, long-term financing update, reimbursement resolution number 2025-02. And we have Ann Lee presented.
Mr. Chair, Miss Lee's out today. She couldn't
Okay.
make it, so we have.
You don't look like Ann.
Luckily for her.
Okay.
She doesn't have a scruffy gray beard. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, Jim Guida stepping in for Ann Lee this morning. I'll be introducing our speaker for the next agenda item on long-term financing update and the reimbursement resolution. Natalie Sidor, who you've had present to you before, is with our authority's financial advisor, Public Resources Advisory Group, or PROG. Natalie will be presenting the update on our municipal market conditions that we're facing right now, a tentative financing schedule for this year, long-term financing update for the surface water supply expansion project, associated pipelines, potential refinancing of the authority's existing debt, and she'll also be requesting approval of the reimbursement resolution that's listed there as recommended by our bond counsel. With that, I'll turn it over to Natalie.
Good morning, Natalie Sidor with PRAG. Thank you for having me. As Jim mentioned, we thought we would just start with a brief update on the municipal market. What we're really seeing is more of the same. Big picture so far in 2025, similar to 2024, everyone expected a certain amount of Fed rate cuts this year. That has already been cut in half. I think one thing we do know is that those predictions will continue to change, and the Fed will be very dependent on economic data in their decision making. In terms of longer term rates, what we look at in the municipal market are MMD rates. That is the benchmark that is used to price municipal tax exempt bonds. And again, we expect to see more of the same, basically volatility on a day-to-day basis that's going to revolve around economic releases, major market events. As you probably noticed, the market is very reactive to certain events, and we see relatively large swings in rates and then stabilize. And so we expect to see more of that throughout the year. In relation to the authority, where we always start is taking a look at your existing debt. So right now, the authority has about $140 million of outstanding senior lien long-term debt, and that produces this debt service profile that you see here. So you can see in the earlier years, debt is about $12 million a year through 2035 and then declines. And this is actually a very positive debt structure for the authority given your upcoming capital needs. Because what we can do is structure the new debt taking into account the back end that has capacity there. All the debt maturing post-2024 is Sarasota County debt that was related to the Phase 3C pipeline for the bonds that were issued last year. And again, when we're looking at structuring the Series 2025 bonds, we're going to look to achieve a level aggregate debt service profile, again, filling in those mid to later years where there's capacity to do so. So the big projects that the authority has coming, of course, are the surface water expansion projects and also the Phase 2B pipeline. Right now, we're in the planning stages for both of those projects. For the surface water expansion projects, we're looking at 30, possibly 35-year debt, given the long-term nature of those assets. Capitalizing interest, so not having payments on that debt until those projects are in service, so that there's no impact on your rates until those projects are complete. Similar to what I mentioned a minute ago, wrapping debt service around the existing debt. And we're also looking at the potential to do multiple bond issues. We don't necessarily want to jump in and fund all, especially these very large projects all at once if it doesn't make sense. We're looking at the different project components, permitting, GMP delivery dates, and making sure that we're timing and structuring each of those bond issues appropriately based on the project components.
I had a quick question on the bond structure. So I remember last year when we were going through the financial analysis, we were getting out of some existing bonds we were in, taking losses to get into another bond. Are we going to see that again this year? I mean, is the market trends, I mean, you try to analyze and predict, which bucket to get into. Are we going to see that again this year?
Yeah, so last year, the bond issues, there was a refunding of existing debt, and that actually produced debt service savings. So your debt service was lowered in the years that those bonds were maturing, and then the new bonds were issued for the Phase 3C pipeline. You do have some existing debt, Series 2015 bonds. It's a very small amount. There's about $6.8 million outstanding that we could roll into these refundings. It looks like they will produce savings, but it's going to be very, very minimal at this point. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity to take off existing debt.
Because I just remember last year we were showing losses because we were exiting some of the bonds we were in. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't accounting. It may be more on the accounting
Yeah,
side of
was,
things. When we're looking at the debt, we're looking at it from a cash flow perspective. So if you're issuing new debt to refund old debt, we want to make sure that you're achieving savings from a cash flow perspective. From an accounting perspective, there could be different components that are taken into account that could show a loss for accounting purposes.
I think there was a net benefit to doing it. I mean, to be able to demonstrate that.
Right.
But we were showing millions of dollars in losses to get to that ultimate net benefit. So just asking the question since we're having a bond discussion.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
For Phase 2B, it'll be a little bit more traditional type bond structure. That's the pipeline project with Charlotte County. We're looking at 30-year bonds, again, capitalizing interest through the in-service date of the project, which will again be a lot earlier than the surface water projects. And then probably just looking at level debt service. And again, we are in the planning phases of these, so some of this could change, but this is big picture what we're thinking right now in terms of the bond structure for those projects. So in terms of next steps, in April, we plan to come back to the board to request your approval to begin the financing process for Phase 2B and also the leading portions of the surface water projects. We're calling that Package 1. And so if we get that approval, we will begin the financing process. That usually takes a few months. And so we would come back in the summer, request your approval of the bond documentation in the summer, and then we would price and close the bonds likely in the fall of 2025. Immediately after finishing that financing, we would request your approval to move forward with the second financing package, which would be what we're calling the lagging portions or second portions of the surface water projects. And so we would come back to the board then in the December 2025 or maybe early 2026, again, depending on the timing of the certain project components, permitting, things like that, for approval of those bond documents, and then price and close that set of bonds after. If there are any costs or any project components that continue to lag, we would potentially look to do a third financing if all of the project pieces didn't work out, that we would finance them in financing package 1 or 2. So today, the motion is related to a reimbursement resolution, and no matter how we structure the bonds or the timing on the bonds, a reimbursement resolution is a standard first step for any sort of tax-exempt bond financing. And what this essentially does is it allows you to reimburse yourself for any upfront costs that you may pay before we issue the bond. So then you can take those tax-exempt bond proceeds and repay yourself. That doesn't mean you have to do that. It just gives you the flexibility to do so.
Okay, are there any member comments? Commissioner?
Yeah, Mike. Backing up to your discussion on the bonds, what's the authority's credit rating currently?
Yep, you're a double A by S&P and Fitch.
Which is terrific.
Yes.
It's exciting. It's a good rate. When you have, members who are, for example, on 66% for Sarasota County, when you're doing the financing, are they looking at that also? Are they looking at our credit rating?
They are. And so what the credit rating agencies are doing is they're looking at the underlying members, what percentage of the debt is being paid, right? Because they're looking at what is the chance of us getting repaid. And so they're looking at the underlying members' credit rating as a big portion of their credit analysis.
Okay. I think that's very positive. So we've got a huge project coming. We've got a $100 million line of credit.
Yes.
How much of that line of credit are we currently using?
I believe, and Ann would know better, but I believe the last time her and I spoke, 80 million was drawn, around 80 million.
I believe that's right,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's a revolving line of credit.
Okay.
So if the authority gets funding in, say, from grants and decides to pay off a portion, you're allowed to then redraw that for projects. So you can reuse the money. The authority hasn't done that yet, but it does have the ability to do that.
Are we comfortable that, that's enough going into the project? Do we need to expand the line of credit? Because, we don't know.
Right.
In fact, I would hope there's some timing involved in terms of, the right time for rating and things like that. So maybe it would be better at certain times to use the line of credit for a little bit of time.
Yes,
But
and that
if
is.
you're using 80% of it right now,
Right.
It would concern me going a project this big that we don't have enough line.
That's actually also part of our planning discussion right now. So that line of credit does mature in October of 2025. So we had already talked about the possibility of potentially extending that further and potentially upsizing it if, depending on if our analysis shows that we're going to need more than that 100 million.
I think
So-
that'd be a good exercise, especially again going into this project.
Yeah, that was a great comment. So on the 80 million that's drawn down, is there a policy that the authority has in terms of expectation to replenish and pay off that drawdown? So
I mean,
every time we draw, do we know there's money that's gonna backfill that in the pipeline? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so typically with a line of credit, it's an interim financing vehicle. So the plan is always to issue some sort of long-term debt to pay it off. So let's just say in an ideal world, that line of credit matures October 2025. If 80 million is drawn at that time, we would issue 80 million of bonds to pay off that line of credit. That's typically how it works. You're in a little bit different situation because you are getting some of the grant monies in, so those monies can be used before the maturity date to pay it off so that you have the ability to re-borrow it if you need to.
Is some of the repayment coming from the users, as customers, when we pay for water? I mean, is that going?
It will eventually, right? When it converts to a long-term debt instrument, that's when it would start being incorporated into the rates.
So if you said that the line of credit's coming due in 2025, what month did you say?
October.
Okay, and so not knowing the market myself
Mhm.
for this type of thing, what's the lead time on being able to secure a number? And if, to Commissioner Cutsinger's point, if we're gonna wanna increase, if it makes sense with what we have in the pipeline coming up, what's the lead time? What if they decide, no, we don't wanna renew? It's their
Yeah.
option.
Right. So our first step would be to go to the existing bank, which is PNC. PNC holds that line of credit. Go to them, ask for an extension, potential upsizing of the line. that's a pretty quick process. But if they do say no, the other option would be to do similar to what we did in 2022, where we went out for an RFP process, and that's usually 2 months, a 2-month process. So we're in February right now. We do plan to start talking to PNC about that extension, see if they're open to that, see if they would potentially be open to upsizing. And even if they said no, we would have plenty of time to go out and get another line of credit if we needed to.
How would we determine or justify to these institutions, let's say we want to upsize to 150 million?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a process we go through to demonstrate to them? Because I don't know if they look for that, or if they just say, oh, you need 150? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and give it to you.
Yeah.
So do we have an exercise that we go through to demonstrate this is what we need?
It's usually just demonstrated by the projects. They want to know what projects you're planning to fund with that line. So if it's justifiable that the authority has either existing projects or project costs have increased since the $100 million line was put in place, that's usually sufficient justification for them to at least consider upsizing it.
So Mr. Anderson, are we in the process of actually looking at upsizing the line of credit?
We are. We've had internal discussions with Ann and Natalie, and we've talked about, it's a timing issue really for us in a lot of ways, because I mentioned permitting earlier, and that's really shifted these projects out in time a little bit, where we had hoped to have permanent financing in place a little bit earlier, but part of the strategy is get the financing in place before the line of credit is due. Plan B, extend the line of credit or increase it. We can extend it another year and keep the 100 million. If we need more, we can ask for more.
Well, the thing, if we need more, will we, at our next meeting, authority meeting, will you be able to demonstrate, hey, I think, we're looking at this, we think we're gonna need 20 or 30 million more. Will we know that in the near, because it's October
right.
that it's due, and so I would think that the authority members would want to weigh in on that.
Exactly. We should have some information by April.
April, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Okay. Again, keep in mind, as Natalie mentioned, we have funds coming in from the grants. We have, for the pipeline projects, about $80 million due from SwiftMud coming in and we use that money to pay down this line of credit as bills come in. So it's a revolving line that we do pay up and down as we get the bills in. So.
And remember, the way SwiftMud reimburses, that's why we needed the line of credit. It's after you've spent the money, then you submit the actual payments, and then they reimburse. So, we rely on the funding, but we still have to come out of pocket. So that's why the idea was get the line of credit with these large projects, so that we have the money to wait for them to then reimburse us. So the idea was that we'd be able to pay off the line of credit with the reimbursement money.
Sounds just like FEMA.
It's faster than FEMA.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
fast enough.
It's a lot faster than FEMA.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hope they're not as slow as FEMA.
No, they're definitely not as slow as FEMA, but it can always be quicker when you're putting the money out first.
So any other member comments on this item?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-02, a resolution of the Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority regarding reimbursement of certain costs related to the acquisition and construction of certain water supply treatment capital providing an effective date.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item 4, long-term financing update and reimbursement resolution 2025-02. Is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to move on to general counsel's report.
Rather than make you all crane your necks, I'm going to get up to the podium. Because as much as you hate it, I actually have a number of items, so let me take a look at it.
And this is not an action item, this is just informational purposes?
Correct. And I'm adding things since I'll have your attention, and the meeting it's still early, so I have a little bit of time. But I promise I won't go too long. First, I wanted to do the PFAS settlement update. So that's good news. So what's been happening with the settlement agreement with 3M, the other companies that have manufactured PFAS, and it's called many different things, but PFAS is what we call it, is that they have the settlement agreements, but then they have to be approved by the federal judge. And then they have to be noticed. And then there's a time frame for appeal. a time frame for appeal. All the settlement agreements have been approved for the 3 companies that we have the settlement signed with. And this is nationally going on. This isn't just state of Florida or just us. Then what happens is 30 days after that, the appeal time expires, and there are some exceptions to that. But at this point, the appeal time has expired, so the settlements are final. Now there's a group appointed by the judge to handle how these payouts will occur in an extraordinarily complex mechanism to determine how much those payouts will be. They've extended the time frame for people to now come in and still apply for getting money. So the idea is you're still open for utilities to submit claims. When the claim period finally closes, then the disbursement of the money will begin. The thinking is at this point by the National Council that the authority is using is that it will begin in sometime in the summer of 2025. So we're thinking that by the end of the summer, the payoffs from the settlement will come out and disbursements over 5 years. But they believe the first disbursement will happen by summer of this year. So that's something to look forward to. There's no way to say what that money will be at this point because there's a fixed pot of money and all of the claims aren't in yet. But once all the claims are in, then they'll run their formulas, then we'll come out and then we'll know what the final number will be, and then I'll get a number for what the first disbursement is and then what the authority will receive over the 5 years. So that's the update for PFAS. Good news, there will be some money coming. We've never looked at this as being, a funding source for being able to do everything you'll need to eventually do with PFAS. And for those who don't know, PFAS has also got a series of regulations, some of which have already been adopted, some which are still being proposed. So at this time, there's no way to say what is it going to cost to treat for it. Currently, the treatment process we already use removes any kind of PFAS residual that may be in the water, and that's carbon treatment. And that's one of the solutions that many of the companies are looking at. It also depends on how much is coming into your water supply as well. And it's parts per trillion that you're looking at right now. The standard is very, very, very low. So that's the update. If there's any questions on PFAS, I'd be glad to answer them.
Any member comments? Yes, sir.
Curious the national consultant that we work with.
The law firm?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's out of Louisiana, and I'm just drawing blank on what the name is right now, but I can provide it to you.
Any other questions?
Right, and the master water supply update, that we obviously approved the master water supply contract, the 3rd amendment in December. And before, when we were taking it through the process, due to the fact that there was funding and scheduling restraints, we had to leave open the option for whether Northport was going to participate or not. They elected to participate. I would like to be able to amend the master water supply contract again, because right now we've got provisions in there. If Northport participates, then this. If they don't, then this. Makes the agreement kind of confusing. In addition to that, when I circulated the agreement around to Council for the Member Governments, they came up with some good suggestions that didn't affect the substance of the agreement, but clarified some of the points. Anytime you get 4 or 5 lawyers looking at something, they're going to have good ideas and more ideas. So I'd like to be able to go back, and we've taken a preliminary look to, if you will, clean up the cleanup. But go back and just do some changes to reflect the fact that Northport selected to take the water, and clarify that issue out so they don't have the alternatives, and to add in some things that were suggested by the council from other member governments.
Do you actually want me to believe 5 attorneys reached a consensus? Are you really trying to push that?
I am shocked, but yes. But the reason why was non-substantive.
Okay.
So, but I was really impressed at 5 members, and that is, I know you guys sit here and you don't think that this is really this difficult, but it really is unique in the state to have member county governments in city, Northport, agreeing on water supply issues. It's the reason why you are able to have an abundant water supply going forward in the future, and other communities struggle because they have a tough time being able to get together and work together on systems. It seems easy when you sit there most of the time, but a lot of areas it's very difficult. So, on master water supplies update, that's it. The other issue that's listed.
Comment?
Sure. So explain the process there. When you do this update, is that going to have to go back for approval?
Yes, you would have to go back before every member government for approval. But the good news is we don't have a time, like a deadline by when that has to be done. So it could just be worked into your agendas over the next months. What I'd like to do is I've got a draft. I'd like to bring it back, send it out first to the, if this is okay with the board, I'm just gonna send it out to the member governments councils, have them review it, make sure there's no more changes or information that they want to place into the agreement, and then bring that back to you all and say, okay, here's what our revision would be. If you approve it, then we'll send it out to the member governments for them to approve and get on their schedules.
You're sure you want to do this, right?
You know, and you would think I would grow in wisdom as I become older, but I still am Pollyannish on the idea that, yeah, I would like to do that just so we have a clean agreement, so we come back and perhaps 10 or 20 years from now, at least 20, I won't be standing here and someone will know what the agreement's supposed to say.
So it's not legally deficient, the document. You're just saying you can edit it and make it cleaner.
Correct.
But, you know, is it an unnecessary exercise to go through? If it's legally sufficient, and we all understand it was an option if the city was involved or if they opted out, it's clear in the document. So why go through this exercise of attorneys and bringing it back before the member commissions? I mean, it could be a consent agenda item, I mean.
It's legally sufficient. Is it legally excellent or good? No, it leads to some questions on what exactly we do with the,
okay.
You know, that's my issue. But
So
it is,
some of the language is nebulous.
it's your decision. I'll bring it back to you, and if you guys say, hey, we don't think, and I'll go through what things we're changing. If you go, this is really not worth the headache, then of course, like, you know, that's what, we won't send it out and we'll wait till we have something that requires us to change it.
I think we got over the hard part. I mean, like I said, it could be a consent agenda item where it's put on there just for, you know, legal update or whatever you want to call it, or just edit to the document.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't bring it back if I didn't think there was some benefit to doing it, not, you know, just to make it right. But I think there is some confusion that could be created in the future from it. So, Disclosure Council, you know, we've had a lot of discussion about the bonds we're about ready to enter into, and there's benefits to actually having our own Disclosure Council. In the past, the way this is handled is we still always have Disclosure Council with bonds, but they're employed by the entity that's going to be, you know, providing the money. We've been using the same Disclosure Council firm, Bryant Miller and Olive, for at least the last 20 years when I've been here. They've done a fantastic job. It'll make it clearer and smoother, and the process will be a little faster if we have our own Disclosure Council, which I think most of you do as well. And we'd like to go ahead and have the board, it's not an information item to vote on, I just want to let you know that we're going to move forward to bring them in as Disclosure Council and sign a retainer agreement with them. Unless there's some objection to that, if there is, then I can bring it forward to you. But under my general counsel thing, I can provide higher counsel for it, and I just want to make sure that that's okay with you. Same fee, they don't have to charge any more than they did before. It could be the bottom line, you know, it's bond counsel, they charge a percentage of what bond counsel would charge, disclosure charges 80% of what the bond counsel charges with disclosure counsel. That's not changing at all. It's just they'll be under our direction, meet the time frames, and be able to work with us more closely. So, any questions on that?
Any member comments? Okay, thanks for the update.
Here's one more thing that I didn't add on there. This is good news, though. We had the Southwest Florida Water Management District has executed an easement, an exclusive permanent easement over the entire RV Griffin for us to be able to accomplish our projects, not just the increase of the reservoir, but the remainder of the property at the RV Griffin. So from this point forward, as long as it's a water resource activity or something to support a water resource activity, we have the authorization we need to do it on the entire property. So I'll have to get an execution from the chair on the easement. They did this at their last governing board meeting. It's part of what we needed to have done in order to go forward with this permitting and SWIPLET for the entire, you know, the new reservoir and the new components of it. So, any question on the easement?
Good news.
Yeah.
Good work getting that done.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the executive director's report. Mr. Anderson.
Nothing further today.
Okay, on the routine status report, do you go through these each individually, or do we just
Typically, just only
if
take
anybody has
questions.
any questions? Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Any members have a question on the routine status reports? Okay. We'll move on to board member comments. Mr. Christinger, Commissioner.
No, just glad to be here. Looking forward to a great year, and you know, excited about the project moving forward, and just appreciate all the work that's been done.
Okay. Commissioner Langford.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, and I know y'all doing some good job, and I don't have to get nervous and sign a bunch of papers now. It works, it's great. It's great. That gavel gets kind of heavy sometimes.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
And then, I think somebody's got a birthday coming up here, right around the corner there, so.
Whose birthday is this coming up? Is that Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, he's the one
I'm
that's not
sorry.
paying attention.
Your birthday?
I just sang happy birthday to you.
You didn't hear him say happy birthday?
You sang happy birthday?
You missed the whole part.
I thought it was a cat. Thank you, thank you. Tomorrow is actually my birthday, but thank you.
Well,
in advance.
happy early birthday.
Yes,
Appreciate it.
Any comments, sir?
No comments from me, other than thanks for the warm welcome. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you for putting faith in me to have the gavel. I'll try not to screw it up too badly this year. So we have public comments, and I have a question, maybe for our parliamentarian, who I assume is our
Yes.
legal counsel. So this public comment seems to be conditioned on if you previously filled out a request to speak card. It's
Well-
kind of odd, because at our board meetings, people may hear stuff that the board has discussed during the course of conducting business. So at the end, we just call it citizens input or public comments on any authority-related item.
How we set it up, and it was again the board's discretion to do so, was that in case we had items we needed to get through, that we could cut public comment short in the beginning and then extend it to the end of the meeting to have people complete public comment at the end of the meeting. So the idea wasn't necessarily to have two different public comment. It was more about if we ran into an issue where we had a timing issue, we'd get the board actions out of the way, and then we could come back and hear more public comment later as a requirement.
Okay, so this is intended to just open it up to public comment on any related authority issue.
Right.
Okay, well, I'm gonna open it up to public comment on any authority-related issue. If you'd like to speak, please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes.
Boy,
Uh-oh.
thank you, Chair.
You like to go last, huh?
Yeah, well,
Thank you for that interpretation of public comment. I appreciate public comment. No children here for public comment, but, I think it's important to practice our First Amendment rights and speak. And then, when your attorney was up there speaking about,
Name for the record, sir.
Eric Howard,
Thank you.
when your attorney was speaking about the agreement and the members working together, being in the consulting business and seeing other members and municipalities work and get through things, I think it deserves a round of applause because I think the authorities are a proud organization. And I didn't want to clap and interrupt him, but
Does Mr. Howard need to fill out a card?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you'll have to fill out a card before you leave, sir. Thank you. Thanks for catching.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. What are the 8 chemicals that we use? I said 4 out of 8 chemicals went from 89 cents to $1.13.
We normally don't interact. You get your 3 minutes and.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we can follow up later. But
I just want to say, one, when I drove up here today, the facility looks absolutely phenomenal. I've been to other facilities upriver, and they're not half as nice. I've said this over and over and over, and I keep worrying about a future drought. God forbid we have an environmental disaster, or even worse, we have both at the same time. I just want to say that I've now been coming to these meetings for 7 years. I've seen the board change quite a bit. I've seen Mr. Lehman retire. I've seen Mr. Coates retire. And now we're here with Mr. Anderson. And I want you all to know, I know you guys do a phenomenal job here providing water to Charlotte County, to everybody. But the things that I spoke about at the very beginning of this meeting, the things that are in this report, at the very end of this, is extremely important. And I mean for everybody, for our children, for our animals, for our grandchildren, for our legacy families. And we really have to keep our eye on what is happening up the rivers, and as I said, all the way from Tampa Bay to Charlotte Harbor. we all have rights as citizens, God-given rights. And I truly believe that human beings are far more important than corporations. And we are going to have a great year. It's going to be the best year we've had in a long time. So God bless everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else in the chamber wishing to speak, you'll have 3 minutes. Please come forward. Okay, seeing nobody rise, we're going to move on to announcements. The next authority board meeting is Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025 at 9:30 a.m. My hometown, Charlotte County Administration Center. I don't think I've had a meeting where we've been in the chamber yet since I've been on the authority. I don't know. Future authority board meetings, June 4th, August 6th, October 1st, and December 3rd. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Saves the
Every station,